From the Video 8 tape vaults come Sally Jesse Raphael on Later with Bob Costas. And today, January 18th, 35 years ago today, January 18th, 1989, Sally was a host of a tabloid TV show called the Sally Jesse Raphael Show. I have to say, I read Wikipedia to brush up on Sally, and so they did, I guess, shorten the name to Sally, probably in reference to Oprah. And I have to say, Mr. Costas is about the most tabloid person in this episode. He makes a politically incorrect joke about Oprah. I think we all made the joke, but it's politically incorrect, isn't it? I like to say happierness.
Everybody today is talking about love, but yet love rejoiceth in truth. And you will not love your neighbor enough to take the truth to him.
I will not accept a God that is a vengeful, hateful God. Not for you, not for anybody.
That's right. Sally.
Good for you, Sally.
Then, Sally, you will have to go to hell.
Sir, there are days that hell is here on earth doing television shows with people like you.
Thanks for staying up later. I'm Bob Costas. We're joined by Sally Jesse Raphael, whose program is seen on 120 stations around America, and her radio program on ABC is heard, I would guess, throughout most of the 50 states, if not in every market, each evening on the ABC radio network. Usually you ask the questions rather than answer them, but this time the tables are reversed. The first one will be easy. The red glasses, which are pretty close to your trademark now. Where'd that come from?
I think like a lot of trademarks, they start out and the idea is terrific, and then it becomes somewhat of a burden in a strange way. I got to tell you that only recently I went to the Peter Lund, who's head of the company I work for, and I said, Peter, I got a great idea. Everybody's making terrific news. They're getting hit in the nose with chairs. They're losing a lot of weight. Can I change the color of my glasses? Went over like a lead balloon.
You think it'd make the cover of People if you changed to blue glasses, like Oprah losing 65 pounds? I just don't think it carries that kind of impact.
I think that the world quite rightly doesn't give a darn. And the world is correct, doesn't give a darn what color glasses. We started the television show, Bob, about 6 years ago. Actually, it was on in St. Louis locally before it went syndicated. And one day I had trouble reading the teleprompter. And I am very vain about certain things. One of them, it's my own teeth, it's my own eyes, and even the ears are my own. And contrary to public opinion, no facelifts, none of that. A little retin-A from time to time, but then what the heck, just to show the kids with it. So I read an ad from one of the big discount stores that said, for X number of dollars, I think at that time it was $14.95, we will give you a pap smear, a eye exam, and frames and everything. Come on down. I went on down, and the only glasses that they had, I assume they wanted me to convert to something reasonable. The only glasses were the red ones. Well, I wouldn't be traded up. $14.95 was fine.
Right.
And I'd already had my pap smear. So
this is kind of like Earl Scheib,
yes,
paint your car for $19.95, exactly. But the hope is you're not going to want that cheap a job.
So now I've got that cheap a job, and I started wearing them, and the first thing I knew, they were on the sides of buses in Tacoma. And then they were on the stationery, and then they were on the press kit. And in our world, as you know, that means imprinted in the mind of God. So there you have it.
You said once that if you're on television, you ought to be not only willing, but to a certain extent anxious to reveal yourself as a person. That's the kind of medium that it is, and people rightly want to know something about you beyond just the performance of your job.
I think when people tend to say, I don't owe the public anything but my performance, that's lovely in 1940, but I don't think that's true today. Take a look at what's happening with our politicians. We, rightly or wrongly, want to know everything about them, about their social life. So I'm very open about my life. To a certain extent. I mean, we're not going to sit here and, you know, I would never discuss intimate sexual details with somebody.
And yet,
I think that, I don't discuss them, though, with my friends.
You often follow up personally on your guests. You get involved enough in their story and their travails that you just want to know for your own satisfaction how they're doing, right?
And when people are saying that a lot of us who do talk shows do prurient, I really wish they would talk about the child who was reunited with its mother after a year and a half, the young girl who was raped, who has had therapy because of us and is now, I'm the godmother of her child, and I visit her in New Haven, of Jack, who weighed 750 pounds, who we are cheerleading by telephone calls, of the lady who adopted the retarded child. Yes, unfortunately, for my business demeanor, I can't take it and let it go. I go home with it, and it's in the elevator, and suddenly that's the extended family.
What's the most moved you've ever been, where you thought you'd lose it?
When I had to do a show about people who lost their parents, and I have never come to a reckoning with the death of my own mother.
How old were you when she passed away?
Oh gosh, Bob, this is 4 years ago now, or 5, but I hadn't dealt with it. I threw a going away party, no funeral, because that's the way she would have liked it.
Wild party?
Yeah, it was a pretty wild party, but she was a pretty wild lady. And it said, goodbye, Dee Dee, bon voyage, and I didn't have a funeral. And then suddenly I was doing a television show one day about the death of your parents, and I realized that I'd never mourned. A lot of laughs and a lot of working hard, and I never came face to face with the fact she wasn't there anymore. And I'm standing there and I'm interviewing people. I was gone. Now, I picked it up, but did I do a show? No, I just picked it up and, as they say, phoned it in. It hurt.
It's funny listening to you tonight to think that at one time, when you first made the transition from radio to television, the criticism was that you were too shrill.
Would they ever say that about a man?
Less likely. They might, but less likely.
Who would they say is shrill?
Well, you could make
Sorry,
a
I
list.
didn't mean
you
to
could
put
make
you
you
on.
could make a list, but obviously not being a shrill or insensitive person myself, I wouldn't want to publicly reveal that
I didn't
list.
mean to do that to you, but shrill is, that's a sexist, to a certain extent, that's a sexist term. If you have a certain amount of strength of personality and you're a woman, you run the risk of being considered shrill.
Your hands feel colder when you leave your home. Don't your eyes look older when you make your own? Understand just like you never know, and you walk so much slower when you're all alone. When you're all alone.
With Sally Jesse Raphael, you've held how many jobs in your life? 24, 25?
Oh, more than that. Broadcast jobs alone, about 27.
And fired from how many of them?
Oh, 18.
Fired from 18. You're pretty resilient. I mean, this is a business that runs to a very large extent on ego and on some version of self-esteem, whether,
Hey, listen,
whether true or false.
I deserved most of those firings. Let me tell you why I don't mind talking about it. Usually you hush something like that up, because there are people out there who are getting fired all the time, and they understand the rejection. And I feel I'm doing fairly well. I'm very happy with what's happened to me. And if I can make one person hurt a little less by saying, hey, look at her. I mean, the whole world has really rejected her. It's all right. You survive. You live to talk another day. So that's why I talk about it.
You began on radio, and you did a lot of those late night shifts where it's midnight to 6 a.m.,
Yes.
where almost anything can happen. Well, you get the feeling maybe that the guy who runs the station is in bed already, and you might be able to do something at 2 o'clock in the morning that you couldn't get away with at noon.
Oh, I know. I know that that's true. When I first started out in broadcasting, somebody said to me, stay away from them. Always work off hours. And I said, who are them? And they said, you know, the ones that wear the suits. If they don't see you, they can't fire you.
So you were on the air, I guess, in Florida someplace at some point, and you're trying to call Fidel Castro constantly?
Oh, yeah. Well, I did a lot of things. This was before we had to tell people they were on the air. So I bought a gorilla by mail and tried to give it to the city of Miami, not being aware that they had didn't have a gorilla set up for a gorilla. That would have cost $400,000 for the gorilla.
That might have been Magilla Gorilla, because I recall that Magilla Gorilla was a gorilla for sale from the cartoon days.
But we were going to change it to Priscilla Gorilla, so it wouldn't be so ethnic in Florida. I don't know where the idea came from. We did that. I called the mayor of North Dakota, and I got him on the phone. Oh,
the mayor of North Dakota?
Yeah.
He was the mayor of the whole state?
No,
He was the governor.
Sorry,
he was whatever he was.
Sorry, Gov. Well, now you know why I'm not in politics. And then you would call resort hotels and order breakfast to a room that I thought existed. And I would call taxis and ask them exactly how far they would go. And just look, it was the dead of night, and nobody wanted to be interviewed. It wasn't the Bob Costas show. I was sitting there in Florida. Please, God, please send me somebody.
Did you ever get through to Castro?
Oh, of course not. But every day, they could hear me talking to the operators and then saying, well, why won't he speak to me? And this was, you know, there were people who were still doing crazy phone calls like that in radio, and this, I think, predates them 15, 20 years.
But Jackie Gleason used to listen to your show, didn't he?
Yes, he was an all-night radio person. And do you know, I talked to him for over a month and did not know that it was Jackie Gleason, which is wonderful. I mean, I think that's the way it should be. And then eventually...
What would he want to talk about?
He'd like to talk about all kinds of things. He eventually asked me to play pool with him, and I did play pool with him in Minnesota Fats. And yes, I lost, dear.
A lot of people probably don't know that in your personal life, there's a very interesting history, and it involves adopting children and foster children.
You asked me before, where do you get the experience to sit and talk to people? And I think if you keep your ears open and you live well, and you try to monitor what you're doing. I have a very large family. I have his and hers. I'm happily married. I've been divorced. I've been married now 23 years to a wonderful, wonderful, probably the only person of his kind that I could ever have found. And we have his children, her children, foster children, adopted children, all kinds of children.
How many children? What's the most children you've ever had in a house at one time?
Oh, well, Thanksgiving a while back, which is the sit around and eat, was 23. This is
23 that you were in charge of?
This is getting to be enormous. Yeah.
That you were in charge of? These weren't guests?
Oh, no, these are children and friends of children.
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
But how many were living in your house at one time?
Eight, perhaps. That's a lot. 8 is enough.
Of which, how many were your natural kids or your husband's?
Oh, I won't tell you that. And I'll tell you why. People sometimes come to me and they say things that are a little cruel. You didn't. But they say, which are real? And I go, well, wait a minute. I've never seen an unreal child. Yeah. I've seen unreal questions, but never an unreal child.
Before or in between jobs, there was a stretch of time where you were so low that you were actually sleeping in your car, right?
A lot. Yeah, Bob. It's interesting when I interview people to see some of the overnight successes. And we have not been fortunate. I have been on the air doing equal numbers of radio and television for 32 years. That's a long time. And I've never had that joy, as it were, of a out-of-the-barrel snap overnight success. Just a steady, plodding climb. And so when those 24, I joke about those 18 firings and those 24 nuclear jobs and then all the rest, but we only in the last 5 years have we been able to pay our American Express bill or feel comfortable, not rich by a long shot, but just that it's okay, that there's food and there's a roof and we're going to be okay. It's been for me a very, very difficult profession, filled with an awful lot of rejection. However, every time that's happened, I've learned something. And I don't feel that I would be who I am if I hadn't been given the opportunity. I didn't say thank you to those people then, but I've been given the opportunity to learn an awful lot, and that is what I sell at night when I do the radio show. It holds me in very good stead. I'm grateful.
How did you feel about yourself when you were literally sleeping in the car, I assume trying to scrape enough money together to eat at McDonald's once a day or something? How did you feel about yourself
Like
at that
failure.
point?
Like a failure. Like...
Frightened?
Oh, yes. Terribly frightened. Like I'd spent my life for naught, and this was a silly business, broadcasting. And there had to be a better way, and why did I throw a life away? And nobody would ever want me. And I was that little Sally Jesse who wasn't asked to the school dance all over again. I was
and you weren't
reduced
asked
to
to the school dance?
Never. I had never had a date in high school or a date in college. And didn't even do well in my marks either. I just was kind of a person who just, somebody once said, can't you be at the bottom of the class? My parents, I was lucky they didn't particularly care about marks, but they said, well, couldn't you at least be last? And I said, no. But that's what being fired reduces you to. It reduces you to, hey. And then you get 3 days of bonbons and love comic books and soap operas, and you pull yourself together because you've got to, because you've got children, and because you have to go on. And you learn from every one of those. It's God's opportunity for giving you a lesson. To have clothes on, then it's to have clothes on.
Complete freedom.
Complete freedom.
Complete
Yes.
freedom of having to wear, of saying, I enjoy this feeling, I enjoy my body, I'm not ashamed of it, I don't have a body prejudice. I don't feel that in a setting with other people that I have to wear clothes to impress anybody. I can be me.
Okay, but...
Back with Sally Jesse Raphael. Now, I know that there are issues of substance discussed very often on your program.
I hope.
However, you know as well as I do that all programs like yours have to book some far-out guests and some far-out notions in order to draw audiences. And these are some programs, the titles of actual programs in the last year or so on your program. Women Boxers, The Men of Chippendales, Gay Ministers, Life After Sex Changes, Women Who Had to Kill Their Husbands, People Who Marry Their Relatives, My Husband Wears Dresses, and my personal favorite, The New Donny Osmond. Because I like to get an update on what Donny Osmond is doing, you know, periodically, and that's an important service. Are there ever times when you walk in there and you say, come on?
Of course. Of course. There are, I think, better shows being done now because everybody in the world is doing a talk show. And that's right. That makes us better. We don't always do well. We try and we care, but we don't always do well. And I got to tell you, some of them are bummers. And mea culpa, I'm guilty, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you that this is the most important thing going on the face of the earth and that we do everything perfectly. No way.
How good a performer do you think you are?
I think right now that she's doing okay. I think she's pretty good. I've finally grown to accept her and to like her.
Is
and I
she
think she's
a
fine.
separate entity from you as a person? Is the person on TV or on the radio
Oh, yeah.
separate?
Oh, in way of acting, no. What you see is what I am. But she who is successful like that, who makes that money, who gets certain privileges that we all get, She's not the person who goes to the supermarket and wheels around the cart and doesn't have a washing machine big enough for the rug, so she does go to the laundromat occasionally. She's somebody who's mommy, and she's very much wife. And, yeah, those people the world treat differently.
You think you're glamorous now? Do people view you as glamorous? Does your husband of 23 years say, all of a sudden, I'm married to a glamour girl?
Oh, no. I was much more glamorous in times gone by. I've always been glamorous, Bob. I'm just a glamorous person.
But you told me you never had a date in high school or in college.
Boys in high school and college don't know anything. Once again, I feel that perhaps they were wrong. They were looking for something different than I was. But glamorous? Oh, I think I was always glamorous. I hope we mean it in a nice way. It's a nice word. When you wake up in the morning, is it, oh my goodness, all right, I've lost, I can handle it, but Rosalind is destroyed. Is it going in and seeing her, and what do you say to her?
Well, I didn't have to go in because we were sleeping in the same bed. Yeah.
When you're president, you sleep in the same bed?
Absolutely. We do. I don't know about the rest of them.
There was a president's bedroom and a first lady's bedroom.
That's what I thought.
With a little connecting corridor. But we made an office out of the president's bedroom. We made Jimmy an office and we moved into the same
In the
bed.
movie, the kings and queens always get their own bedroom. I swear, I've been to the White House on one of those tours. There was Mrs. Lincoln and Mr. Lincoln's.
That's right.
We got along
What
better
they
than
say when
did.
you put the...
Jesse Raphael for staying up later. If you could have one person on your show that you haven't been able to have, who would you want?
No, not one. Margaret Thatcher, Katharine Hepburn, not one. A ton, a ton. There's so many people to talk to.
Well,
how wonderful.
The longer you stay on the air.
The better my chance.
That's right. Law of averages is with you. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you.
See you all later.